Welcome back, everybody, to Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and welcome to another episode of our new podcast for 2021, Men on a Mission podcast. We have a special guest with us for this episode. His name is Sean Quigley, and he represents a amazing organization for veterans called Pets for Vets. Pets for Vets, and it's just a great organization. So I believe Sean is with us. Are you there?
I am. Thanks for having me on, Brad. I appreciate it.
You bet, Sean. Thanks for being on the podcast. Um, I didn't get a chance to ask you before. We were talking before we went on air. Are you Army, Air Force, Marines? What branch were you in?
Yes, I served 4 years active duty in the Army. I was a medic, the First Army Division, Second Infantry Division.
Awesome. Okay, well, I worked with you guys a lot because I was 7 years Army, and I was a military police officer. So
Okay.
us and the medics spent like a lot of time together. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely familiar with you guys. I was my active tour was in Anchorage, Alaska, and I was with the 56 Military Police Company in Anchorage, Alaska, for 3 years. So
Okay.
that was an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Wow,
sure. A
yeah,
cold one, I'm
the
sure.
the stories I could tell you. Um, I have one story about Alaska, and you might find this somewhat humorous because the outcome was positive. It wasn't bad, but we had so much snow in Anchorage. Um, One particular winter, I was there for 4 years in Alaska, and we had so much snow on Fort Richardson that I pulled up in my little OG green sedan, the military police vehicle. I pulled up to the PX and going to check the building, and it was freezing, and we had like 3 feet of snow on the ground. It was crazy, but I felt kind of a bump when I pulled up to the PX, and it's like, well, that's kind of strange. I must have hit a hard spot in the snow. So I pulled up. I left the sedan running. I went and did my building check, my perimeter check of the PX, made sure it's secure and everything, and came back, got into the sedan, and started to pull away from the PX, and there was this bump in the snow, and it started to move, and I was like, "What in the world is buried in the snow? It's moving." So I got out of the sedan and walked over, and it was a native, Alaska native that was on the base on Fort Richardson for his National Guard training,
Mm.
and he had a little bit too much to drink because out in the bush of Alaska, they're dry. There is no alcohol in the bush, and so these guys would come into Fort Richardson where they could drink, and he just kind of made himself a little igloo and burrowed himself into the snow, and then where, when I pulled up on him, the sedan was running, and he was like, "Hey, this is warm. I'm nice and warm and cozy. I'm underneath this car." But I discovered that was the speed bump, or the bump that I hit when I pulled up to the PX. So, but he was fine. We got him up and took him to Elmendorf Air Force Base, to the hospital there, and yeah, he was okay. He had no scrapes, no broken bones, and he was highly intoxicated, but he was warm, and he kind of knew what had happened. I think he even asked me, "Did you run over me?" So so I had to say, "Yeah, I did. Sorry, you were buried in the snow, and I didn't know you were laying there."
Sounds like a
Uh,
dangerous place to take a nap.
yeah. So, well, he just kind of, like I said, burrowed into a snowbank that was up against the PX, and right there where we parked. And yeah, so that's one of my funny stories from Alaska, and I have some other ones that aren't that funny.
Mm.
Didn't have really good outcomes, but so anyway, start off with a little humor, but that was one of my fondest memories of serving in Alaska. It is so cold up there, and then we used to do our winter training in Fairbanks, uh, and Fairbanks in a tent where you had to go to the bathroom outside of the tent with the Yukon stoves and the Mo gas up on a tripod. Whew, let me tell you,
Yeah.
Fairbanks is wicked. So um, anyway, we'll just thought I'd throw that out there because, like I said, that's one of my fondest memories, and I've told that story to a lot of folks, and they're like, I've been asked dozens of times, didn't you feel guilty? And it's like, well, yeah, but I didn't know. I mean, when you have that
Yeah, of
much
course.
snow, um, even in Alaska, I mean, they plow like every 20 minutes, but they push everything up against the buildings, and up there, in Alaska, they have real snow drifts up there. They're huge. So,
Yeah, but
but I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, and you are connected with or affiliated with the organization Pets for Vets. And I'm going to go ahead and just, you know, turn the mic over to you and tell the listeners about the organization, when it started, and the mission that this organization is on, and what they're doing for our men and women out there serving our great country.
yeah, so thanks for that. And just before I even jump into it, just thank you for allowing me as a representative from Pets for Vets to have time on your podcast. It's very important for us to get our name out there so veterans know we're here, also so potential volunteers know we're here, others who might want to help the organization know that we're here. So thank you very much for that. So about, I guess it was about 10 years ago or so, I had a buddy of mine who contacted me, and he said he had received a contact, phone call, some emails from a group called Pets for Vets. And it was really kind of a good timing for me because I had been looking for some avenue to help veterans during my time off from work. And I'm a huge dog lover as well. So when I did some due diligence about Pets or Vets, I looked into it a little bit. It seemed like a really good match for kind of what I wanted to do. And the short version, I'll get into the longer version in a second, but the short version is that what we do is we take animals from shelters and we train them and put them together with veterans that need a companion animal. The program was started, I think it was around 2008, 2009, don't quote me on that, by a young lady named Clarissa Black. She is a fascinating lady because she's one of these people that, like, if you've ever seen the dog whisperer guy and some of the other animal trainers that you see on TV, they just seem to have this additional sense and this additional connection with animals. She's one of those type of people. She went to school for things of that nature. She has a bachelor degree in animal science, and I think she has a master's in anthrozoology or something along those lines. She worked as a dolphin trainer for a while. I think she did training with a bunch of other animals. She just has that kind of knack and an ability to kind of connect and understand animals. And she did a lot of volunteer work as well. And she was working at a VA center at one point, working with some veterans, and she kept kind of hearing the same thing over and over again. She would have her dog with her, who was, of course, very, very well trained. And all the veterans would gravitate towards the dog, and then eventually she would move on to work with another veteran, say hello to another veteran, and they would all say, "Wow, like I love your dog. I wish I could have your dog." And just could you come back again so I could see your dog again soon? These types of things kept kind of happening. And her dog was a rescue dog. It was not one of these a dog that she got from another place that was already fully service dog trained or anything along those lines. It was just a rescue dog that she had trained. Again, of course, she's being an animal trainer, she trained it very well, but it was a rescue dog. So she kind of had this light bulb moment at one point, and she kind of thought, I wonder if there's something I can do here to try and kind of expand this from me, one person, finding some dogs for a few veterans here and there that might be good for them. Maybe there's something I can do to try and replicate this. And try and help more veterans and get more good dogs out of shelters. And that's, of course, the how Pets for Vets was born. We do have kind of a national Pets for Vets organization, but we also have, I want to say, about 25 or 30 chapters around the country right now. And each one of those chapters is its own 501c3. Of course, they're supported by the National Pets for Vets organization, especially when they first get going. They get a lot of initial supplies and materials from Pets for Vets. And that's how I got started, how I got involved, because we didn't have a chapter in the area where I live in Southeast North Carolina. And I helped start the chapter here. I'm currently the chapter director, still after whatever, 9 or 10 years, I guess it's been. And I really do enjoy what I do. And the process, kind of in short, is we get an application from a veteran. We take a look at the application, give the veteran a call. We'll do a face-to-face meeting so they can kind of get to know us. We can get to know them a little bit. We might meet for coffee somewhere. Just kind of keep it pretty casual so we can kind of get to know each other a little bit. Our trainer will be there as well. So usually it's the chapter director and the trainer and possibly somebody else to maybe take some notes or offer some support. But it's just kind of a get to know you kind of thing both ways, so they can get to know our organization and what we offer. And then eventually we'll do an in-home visit so we can see the environment that the dog is going to go into. And just to give you an example there, I've worked with an older Vietnam veteran who had some injuries from his war, and he wasn't able to get around very well. He lived by himself in a very small condo, hardly ever went outside. And I've helped an OEF veteran who was a younger guy, was incredibly active. He had a wife and 2 very small children, and he had a huge yard, huge fenced-in yard. He was always on the go. He liked to go for jogs. He liked to go to the beach. He liked to surf. He liked to play Frisbee golf. So, there's 2 completely different situations that we're looking at when you look at something like on those kind of ends of the spectrum there in terms of different situations that the dog is going to be going into that we need to try and find for them. So kind of once we get to know the veteran fairly well, once we get to know the situation the dog's going into, we start kind of building a profile of the type of dog that we're looking for that particular veteran. And then at that point, then we start going out to shelters in our area, and we start looking through shelters and trying to find a dog that matches that profile. If once we do find that dog, we'll put them through a lot of socialization tests to make sure that they pass all of our socialization tests. They have to pass those before we pull them from the shelter. And if they pass those tests, we'll put them into our foster homes where our trainers will work with them. We get them up to speed as far as their training is concerned. We make sure that they're healthy, they're up to date on shots, they're microchipped, all those necessary things to make sure the dog is completely healthy and ready to go before we have match day. Once they're all ready to go, we'll schedule match day with the veteran. We'll bring them all the initial supplies that they'll need: dog dishes, toys, leashes, dog beds, all those types of things. It doesn't cost the veteran anything because we exist on donations, so that we buy those supplies for the veteran. We bring those with us on match day, or typically a few days before or a week before. And then we work with the veteran to make sure that the veteran understands the training that we put the dog through. So they use similar commands. They follow the advice of our trainers. Our trainers work very closely with them and follow up, the next day, several days afterwards. And then as things start to progress, as they start to form a bond, then our trainer will start to make less frequent visits and have more intermittent calls with them. But you see the bond really form usually pretty quickly between our dogs and our veterans, because we do work very hard to try and find the right dog for our veterans. And it's really, honestly, it's really heartwarming. And every time we have match day, it's something that really gives me a good vibe and really kind of helps me keep going and keep volunteering and do what I do to help Pets for Vets, help our dogs and help our veterans.
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't too long-winded, Brad. Sorry. I love talking about it, so I'll just run on for a while sometimes.
No, that's fine. Is that my voice coming through your speakers, or?
Yep, I got it.
Oh, okay. I heard a little background, so I didn't know if it was on my end or yours. My first question that popped into my head is, if someone is out, out there listening and they would be interested or want to look into starting a chapter in their area, what would be their first step in doing so? Because obviously, more chapters, uh, is better.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the more chapters we have, the more veterans we can help, the more dogs we can get out of shelters. So, yeah, I mean, it's really simple. They can go to petsforvets.com, and there are forms in there where you can apply to be a supporter or a volunteer for our organization. And there's lots of things that you can check when you're interested in being a volunteer. You can say that you're interested in starting a chapter. You can say that you're simply interested in donating to Pets for Vets. There's a lot of different areas that you can check. But if you say that you're interested in helping to start a chapter, then that's part of what our national organization does. They're always kind of trying to put together folks from different areas, and kind of have that grassroots thing going on where, hey, we've heard from 4 or 5 people in Tuscaloosa that are interested in supporting Pets for Vets. So let's see if we can continue building this. Let's do some advertising in the area, see if we can get the right trainers that we need, see if somebody's, hey, we already have somebody who's willing to be chapter director. So let's see if we can try and get this chapter off the ground. So yeah, I mean, they can go to the petsforvets.com and apply to be a volunteer. You could be a chapter director soon. You could be one of our trainers soon. If you're somebody that has a good, extensive, positive reinforcement training background, we would love to hear from you. And of course, anybody that wants to donate can do the same thing. They can go to Pets for Vets. You can donate right there. You can select a chapter if there's a specific chapter you want to. If somebody lives in Southeast North Carolina, they've probably seen me around at different events and my name on flyers and things like that. So there's Pets for Vets Cape Fear chapter. I'd love to donate to Cape Fear. You can specify your donation that goes to our chapter, or another chapter. There's one up near DC. You can specify that too. So petsforvets.com, our website, has a lot of really good information. And if you want to see an impact of what we do, our website is a fantastic place to go because there's a lot of veteran stories out there. We're fortunate. We've had a lot of veterans who kind of checked the box and said, yes, it's okay to use our information to let other veterans know kind of how this has helped me. So we have a lot of veteran stories out there. I would recommend bring a couple tissues with you when you log on to those, because it's a pretty heartwarming thing when you see veterans in their matches and kind of how that bond has really helped them in their quality of life.
Wow. Yeah, it's I think that I mean, we'll put your website in the show notes. So for the listeners, we'll put the link to the website in the show notes. You just click on it, you can go right there. And then there's a donate page. Now, do you guys have a YouTube channel?
I know we have videos on YouTube, but I don't know if we have a specific channel. That's a good question, Brad. Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
know we do have videos out there. I know we have several videos out there. I just don't know if they're in like a channel. I'm not super
Right.
YouTube comfortable.
Right. Yeah. As far as I mean, YouTube would be a real powerful tool as far as on match day, to have those captured. Those first time, the meet and greet on match day, to have that. That
Yeah.
would be something positive on YouTube that
Yeah, for sure.
that you could share. So let me see. I just have a few more questions. We're going to be coming up on a break here, and we'll take that short break and come back for part two. When we come back after the break, though, I want to get into the emotional aspect of it and the reasoning uh, for a need for this service, and the emotional side, um, from the veteran standpoint, on how critical this is and how important this is for veterans. I have my opinions on it, and I'll share those with you and the listeners when we come back after the break. But one question I had before we go to our break is there any paid staff on the with the national organization, or is this all voluntary?
The national group does have some paid staff. We do have some people that we we do pay to help the national group. I would say stay on point with certain things. I don't know who all of those people are. There's a few.
Hmm.
I know we have, for example, some lawyers that we have on retainer. I don't know if they volunteer their time or they're paid. And I know we have a couple other, of course we have people that have to, maintain the finances and the books and things like that.
Hmm.
But that aside, that's the national group. On the chapter level for the Pets for Vets chapters, we're all our own 501c3s and we're all volunteers.
Okay.
Um, and I think it's really interesting because some of the chapters, like my chapter, the volunteers that I have right now, aside from myself, there's like no military affiliation there at all. Like they didn't serve, they didn't really know people that served.
Wow.
Like my trainer knew somebody that served, but most of my other volunteers really didn't. Now, some of the other chapters are very different. Some of the other chapters are all very tied into the military, either lots of veterans or their had lots of family members that were veterans. So it really varies, but all of the chapters, the 25 or 30, like I said, chapters around the country, we're all volunteers.
Okay. Now, the founder, um, I think we're getting feedback from me through your computer.
Oh,
But
sorry about
well,
that.
yeah, um, that's just what it sounded like. It's like I was coming out your speaker and coming back in your mic. So, no problem. Um, when you talked about the founder, it's Melissa Black,
Clarissa.
Clarissa
See.
Black.
Hmm.
Now, did she have any previous connection to the military, like her father, her brothers, her grandfather?
Honestly, not that I'm aware of. I don't believe so.
Hmm.
No, she was doing some volunteer work with a nearby VA center, and that's kind of how she gravitated towards veterans.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I find that really encouraging. People outside of the military stepping into a service for veterans where they have no personal connection with veterans, and I find that very encouraging, very inspirational. Sometimes it's hard for us as veterans to help one another, you know, and we're
Hmm.
connected. We took the same oath, and it's just really inspiring to see someone come from outside of the military and see a need and to fill that need. Just that's that I think that is really encouraging, and we need more people like that, obviously, along with veterans need to help other veterans. um, that's the purpose of my podcast, obviously. So we need more people helping other people is my point. So did you have any last point you want to make, and then we're going to just jump to break?
No, just that I couldn't agree more. I'm so thankful to Clarissa that she recognized that she had an ability um, to help affect in a very positive way the veteran community, and I'm very grateful to her that she did that. Just on behalf of all the veterans that she's been able to help and all the dogs that she's been able to rescue as well. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to let the listeners know we have been talking with Sean Quigley, and he is representing, well, he's in North Carolina, but he is a chapter director for the national organization Pets for Vets. And that's who we've been talking to. So stick with us. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get into a little more about the organization and a little more uh, a deeper dive into veterans as a whole and the emotional aspect of it, and why this is such an important organization and an important service to the men and women of the armed services. So we will be right back after a short break. Welcome our new sponsor, Scars and Stripes Coffee Company. They empower veterans to build their own business using their e-commerce platform. When you purchase from Scars and Stripes Coffee, you are buying from a veteran, and your purchase directly impacts the men and women who have served our country. Do more than say, thank you for your service. Order today and empower a veteran. Use vet code Brad Richard at scarsandstripescoffee.com.
That's scarsandstripescoffee.com. Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. They have great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you'll need to make a podcast in one place. Check them out and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and my guest with me today is Sean Quigley from Pets for Vets. And we are back from our short break. So he kind of told you a little bit about the organization and told you all the amazing things that this organization is doing. In the second part of the episode, let's get into, I think everyone is aware that the veterans, there's tens of thousands of veterans that are having a hard time and they're struggling with many different things. The suicide rate it's published out there, 22 a day. That fluctuates and changes, but on average, it's about 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. Your organization and your service, Pets for Vets, I think is a monumental tool to help reduce those numbers, because when it comes to whether it's cats, kittens, gerbils, hamsters, dogs, pets take people back to their childhood. And my previous podcast was all about your little me, your little person within you, and how so many answers to our adult questions can be found in the past with our little selves. I think our little people really play a major influential role in what we do or don't do as an adults. And it causes a lot of frustration, a lot of disconnect, a lot of discouragement, and a lot of despair. And when you're talking about pets, for example, to match a vet with a dog, and for that vet to receive unconditional love, and for the pet to respect the vet when the vet, gives him a command and does what he's told, and then he gets rewarded. I think there's an element there that when it comes to the vets, it's an element of going back to childhood, because most kids had a pet when they were little, and it was their best friend. They went on walks together, they went fishing together, they went to the park and played ball together. And so do you see that aspect when it comes to healing and supporting vets, where it gives them something to take care of and to keep safe and to get love back, give love to the dog and love back from the dog? Do you see that kind of playing out?
Yeah, I see a lot of what you're talking about in our matches. I I've never thought about it in that way. And I'm probably not around them enough to go that deep into the psychological part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can tell you, I can give you some examples. I matched a dog with a gunny that was just about done with his career. He had done a little over 20 years, multiple tours overseas, Purple Heart veteran, or was about to be exit active duty. So, had a Purple Heart. And, he had a two-story townhouse that he lived in, and he typically slept downstairs on the couch. The bedroom was upstairs, but he almost never slept upstairs, because a lot of veterans can identify with this. He was very anxious. He had poor sleeping habits. When he did go to sleep, it was at very short, he'd get short blasts of sleep. He usually had weapons readily available, because he was basically just, he was constantly on guard because of his anxiety, because of his PTSD, because a lot of the things that he had going on inside of his head, he was constantly on guard. So we had match day for him. And now this is a bit of an extreme example, but what he told me is that night he slept for almost 8 hours upstairs in bed. And that was the first time that had happened to him in many years. So right there, one of the things that you can look at is the massive quality of life impact that has for him. And for whatever reason that is, I can't really explain it. Whether it's the fact, I call them furry battle buddies. We in the military, we all had a battle buddy, right? At some point in time, whether it was when you were in basic or whether you were out with your unit or wherever you were, at some point in time, you had a battle buddy. So I call them our little furry battle buddies. Whether that's, the fact that he had his furry battle buddy there when he was trying to sleep, maybe that made him feel the comfort that he needed to feel, or lowered the anxiety enough so he could get that sleep that he needed. Maybe there was something else about it. Maybe it took him back to his childhood when he had a dog when he was a child, because he did have dogs when he was younger. And maybe there was some comfort level that he had developed when he was a child with his dogs. And again, he just felt that connection with his new match right away. So it allowed him to get sleep. But if you talk to anybody and they only got an hour or two of sleep the night before, and you ask them how they feel, they're going to feel pretty grumpy. They're going to feel pretty miserable. Their body's probably going to hurt a little bit. Things are going to ache a little more than they usually ache. It's going to be a little harder to move than it normally is. And you're not going to feel like you have a lot of concentration. You're not going to feel like you have a lot of focus, etc. Well, compare that to when you get a good night's sleep. When you get 7, 8+ hours of sleep, all of a sudden the world doesn't seem so bad. Your body doesn't hurt as much. You can focus a little more. You can think a little clearer. It's just, it makes a world of difference in terms of your quality of life. And for him to tell us that meant the world to me. I have poor sleep patterns myself, and so it's very easy for me to talk about that, because those are all the things that I experience. I regularly have, my body hurts all the time because I'm not getting the sleep that I need to get. I can't focus as much as I need to. I can't think, I call it fuzzy brain. I'm not clear when I'm thinking a lot. And, and I hear this from a lot of our veterans. Something else, another example, I did a match with a buddy of mine. He was a Purple Heart veteran as well, and he isolated a lot in his home. And after match day, it was about a week or two later, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine who owns a gym, and I'll just use his first name. Here comes Matt. And Matt has his dog with him, and he just comes walking into the gym just like as happy as he could be. And he was like, "Hey, check out my dog. Look at what my dog can do." And he's like, he's taking the dog through all the commands that we taught him, and he's not paying attention to anything else. All he's paying attention to is his dog and his relationship with his dog, right? He's not looking for egress points. He's not worried about that car that just pulled into the parking lot. He's not worried about that pile of trash over there in the corner of the parking lot and whether that's got an IED in it. He's not thinking about those things. He's focused on his dog, and he's out in the community. He's out. He's not isolating anymore. He's out in the community, and he's talking to other people, even indirectly through, kind of his relationship with his dog. But he's out and about. He's getting out. He's reconnecting with the community, and that is, again, a massive quality of life improvement. And when I see these things, again, it's very, very heartwarming for me, because I'm having, hopefully that really positive quality of life impact, one match at a time. And it doesn't, it bothers me sometimes that I can't do more, because I see that positive impact. And I basically wish I could get a dog for every single veteran and be like, here, we train the perfect dog for you.
Right.
Because I think now, I don't think it would help everyone, but I do think it would help an awfully high percentage of veterans.
Hmm.
Um, because like you say, I mean, it is a very somber topic, but when you say 22 a day, every veteran knows what you're talking about. And I tell people, look, there's not 22 veterans a day committing suicide because they're getting wonderful care. Um,
Right.
and I hate to say that because there are a lot of people at the VA, and there's a lot of people at other supportive veterans organizations who are trying their best to help veterans. But when you hear a number like that, when you see those statistics, it's not just statistics. These are men and women that have served our country, and they're not getting what they need, whatever that is.
Hmm.
And I think as a country, we have to try and do better in that area. And I'm very grateful that even though it's on a small scale, I'm doing a little part here to try and help some of our veterans and trying to get, these are great dogs. We're getting some great dogs out of shelters too. And it's like they know, that they've had kind of a rough time because they're in a shelter. And it's like when we have match day, it's almost like they know, hey, this young man, this young woman had a bit of a rough time too. Maybe we should be buddies.
Hmm.
And that bond just formed so quickly, and it's so heartwarming to me. I love telling people about it. And again, I'm grateful that you're having me on so I can tell, more people. Even if it's not Pets for Vets, of course I'm biased. I love Pets for Vets. I think it's great. But even if you find another veterans organization out there that you can support, um, or your local animal shelter. We get dogs from animal shelters. That's where we get them from. So if you can support your local animal shelter, if you can support veterans organizations, and try and help them out, I mean, I think it's so important that people get involved, whether you have a military connection or not. It's just,
Hmm.
these are people that have sacrificed a lot for our country. And I think it's wonderful when people choose to try and get involved, to spend a little bit of their time and energy, to help out. I'd love to see it, and I'm very grateful for all those that help us.
Hmm. No, absolutely. I wanted to back up to the two stories that you told. The one with the gentleman um, that had a hard time, sleeping,
Hmm.
and he was always on guard. Um, and then the other gentleman that was self isolating and not getting out in the world. Um, you know, uh, through through my clients, through my mentoring, and through the people that I speak with, um, what came to mind or what popped into my head when you were telling those stories, the first gentleman, it sounded like f- when that transformation happened, and he in that first night with his new dog, um, he felt safe and he felt protected, and that just took him back to a place of security and safety. And I know when I know growing up, um, my dog was always there to protect me, and no one could ever get anywhere near me because my dog would take care of him. And it gave me that sense of security and protection. And I knew that he would stand up to anybody to protect, his little buddy. And so he obviously felt safe, and felt calm and at peace. And for him it was comfort, and it was that dog was providing his soul comfort, and kind of like a warm blanket, and he was able to sleep. So that was the first story that I wanted to comment on. And the second one is the gentleman that was self-isolating. When he shift his focus away from his fears and his anxiety, and he shifted it onto something that he was excited about, that he loved and cared about. And for him it was like going to the park with his dog, hanging out with his buddies, you know, and showing off, his little dude and what he could do, you know. And
Hmm.
so his mindset shifted from the paranoia, the fear, the anxiety, and it shifted to something positive and and something that he was truly excited about right down to his core.
Hmm.
And that's why, you know, as you said, he was kind of oblivious to the world around him. None of those things were, you know, he didn't have his sights on anything outside of the dog, because that was that he was living in that moment with the dog, and that was the most amazing thing at that time. So
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and it's those two stories. I've seen that, I've heard it. The people that I work with, um it's a reoccurring theme. It's a reoccurring theme where people, um going through all this negative stuff that we all deal with, you know, um, finding that place of peace and happiness and being excited about something instead of fearful of something. And I I am so you know, I'm honored to have you on, because this is, I think this organization is obviously it's making a difference. I think I read on the website now you guys have like 500 plus matches. Is that right? Or is that
Yeah,
over? Is that
I
over?
know we're over 500 matches. Yep. I don't know exactly how many now, but we're over 500. Yes, which I love. I love
Yeah.
throwing that out there to people.
Yeah. I mean, that is literally 500 animals that were saved, and 500 soldiers that were probably saved because of that match. And that's some big stats right there, you know. That is
Mhm.
that is a major accomplishment. And the podcast and why I wanted to have you on is my goal and my focus, and I hope hopefully you can appreciate this being a fellow vet. My goal and focus is helping vets and their families to get to that place on their own, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
To get to that place of peace and calm and strength, and to find something inside them that makes them feel like your friend that brought his dog to the gym, you know.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
at the time that might have been his only thing he was excited about in his whole life, was that
Mhm.
dog. And so, you know, my goal is to help vets get to that place, maybe without a dog. Yeah, I mean, if they can do it with a dog or a cat, or, you know, they can do it with a pet, that's great. But they need to be there, and and we need to help them find that place where you know, they can just be ecstatic about something as simple as, you know, Look, my dog, you know, can flip over a biscuit, you know." And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
um that's, you know, I think, as you mentioned earlier, there are so many organizations and there's so many resources. uh, I reached out to probably a dozen different national organizations, national veteran organizations, and to be honest with you, I got
Mm.
very little response, because they're so big.
Mm.
They're so big, and they're kind of a bureaucracy, you know. I mean, and they're very big, and you know, that was probably part of the reason why I didn't get a lot of responses back. Um, but I simply asked them to let me help in the way I can, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
your organization was the third contact that I made. The third one, well, you were the first one to respond, but since then I've had two other
Mm.
organizations respond. And my goal is not to take away from your organization or any other huge national organization. It's to find a blank that find a blank and fill it, because there's a lot of veterans, like you said, there's a lot of organizations out there, including the VA, but there's a lot of blanks that are being missed. And I
Sure.
think we need to fill every single one of them, and, and help in any way we can. And your way is one way, but it is a great way, I think, because it
Yeah.
really gets to the core of who the veterans are. And hey, it gives them something to protect. And that's what all of us really want to do. We want to
Mhm.
protect and defend, and we want to be strong people. So,
Yep.
um,
Agreed.
what what are the last few things here that you would like the listeners to know about the organization? Um, any personal story that you have, or any emotional real message that you want the listeners to understand how important this is?
Yeah. I just, I mentioned it earlier. I think this is very important for people who, I mean, obviously, if somebody's listening to this podcast, they have some interest in supporting either veterans or maybe their local shelter or something along those lines. I would encourage them to, you don't have to, I have some retirees, for example, that volunteer with us because they have a lot of time now. So they're volunteering with it, and I love them to death. But you don't have to wait until you have huge blocks of time like that to get involved. It might be something as simple as doing something for somebody where you help send things out, or you help create flyers that you can post online for different things to try and get either our organization's name out there or other organizations that are supporting veterans. And you don't have to. It doesn't take a lot. If we have several small numbers of people here and there that are willing to give an hour, a couple hours a week, that adds up. And if you have somebody who's kind of organizing that and pushing it all in lockstep in the right direction, then you can really affect change. And you can have a very positive quality of life impact on a lot of our veterans and a lot of great dogs that are out there in our shelters. So, I look forward to having more volunteers coming into our chapters, and I appreciate all the volunteers we have because they do great work in supporting our veterans and finding great dogs for them. And there's a ton of information on our website, petsforvets.com. I would encourage people to go there. Again, there's a lot of veteran stories out there. You can see different chapters around the country that have done different matches. Again, have some tissue handy because it really is heartwarming to see the change, the positive change in a lot of these veterans' lives. And they might go from like my buddy Matt, that is somebody that was doing a lot of isolating to now he completes a lot of daily living activities that he didn't before. Going out and interacting with other people. Just taking their dogs for walks a lot creates those little hey, how you doing? I saw you yesterday. Yeah, that's a great dog you got. And next thing you know, they're talking with their neighbors. Every couple of hours when they take their dog out for a walk. That little interaction can be something that helps save someone. And you really don't know what somebody's going through. And obviously, the veteran community is really, really affected by the long wars that we've been going on, the multiple deployments a lot of people do, and it's had a huge negative impact. So something like our organization or other veterans organizations that are working to support our veteran community, try and get involved, try and support. Even just send a note or a letter. Hey, thanks for what you do. I love it. I hope to see you guys at an event soon. Any of those things could be helpful. And of course, a podcast like yours that reaches a lot of people, Brad, again, thank you for having me on so I can talk more about Pets for Vets and get the word out there. You never know, maybe this podcast has somebody that contacts us and eventually gets a match, and maybe that saves a doggie and maybe that saves a veteran. So thank you for
Absolutely.
that, and thank you for everybody that listened to us today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You are more than welcome. I think my volume's up again. It's bad enough I have to hear myself once, but if I have to hear myself twice, then it's then it's just over the edge. But um, yeah, you're very welcome. It's been a complete honor to have you on the podcast. The podcast, the previous podcast, when it was the Man at 50 podcast, um, reached about 36, 37 countries, including the United States. Um, but we have men and women serving in our military all over the world, and hopefully that it reaches some of them or their family members overseas, um, and provides them some information and some hope. You know, um, I'm going to wrap up here because we're right at the end. But I had just a couple other questions, real quick. And once again, for the listeners, in the show notes, we will have petsforvets.com. We'll have the link in the show notes, and you can just click on that and head on over and get all the information, and hopefully get involved with this great organization. But when you are looking at a vet, and helping them to set up a match, okay, for them, are you doing this only with soldiers that are out of service now, or are you doing this for soldiers that are currently serving?
Yeah, that's a great question. We typically don't work with active duty, but I do say typically because, of course, everything is situational, right? If
Hmm.
somebody is, for example, like the gunny that I just worked with not too long ago, now he was right at the end of his career, so he was not going on any more deployments. He was on his last set of orders. He was about done, so we have no problem working with a guy like that. If somebody else maybe is non-deployable for whatever reason, then that's somebody that we might be able to work with. But typically, we only work with veterans. We're trying to not create a problem where, for example, if I have somebody who, is in the infantry and in the army, they're going to get deployed pretty frequently, and what are we going to do with the dog? So before we even place a match with that particular soldier, we have concerns.
Hmm.
And we don't want to create a problem. We don't want to make anything worse, and that could be something that causes difficulty for them because maybe they're really worried about what happens with the dog. So we just kind of want to stay away from creating any issues. We want to do everything we can to try and help. And most of what we see there is people either at the end of their careers, non-deployable, or just working with veterans. So that's a really good question. But I do say any veteran that believes that they could benefit from having a companion dog is more than willing to apply. One of the other questions I get from a lot of veterans is, do I have to have a diagnosis of PTSD or TBI? Do I have to have a physical injury? Do I have to have a Purple Heart? Do I have to have, whatever? And all you need is a DD 214 that showed that you served and your belief that you could benefit from a companion animal. And if we have a chapter in your area, we will do what we can to try and help.
Hmm. Excellent, excellent. Sean, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. It was great to have you. Uh, what I would love to see is, and I don't, this might be happening already, but I would love to see the chapters that exist now visiting some VA hospitals. Do you know if has that happened? Um, has any of the chapters actually, kind of taking in like a few dogs to visit vets that are in VA facilities?
Well, it's a little different from VA to VA about kind of who they're willing to work with and who they're willing to have come into their facility.
Right.
I hate to say that. I'm not trying to throw stones at them because again, I know they're doing what they can to try and help veterans, but there are different rules, so it's not hard and fast across the country. What I
Hmm.
can tell you is that, for example, we did a match with a veteran about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and he kept his dog in training. Now, he did this on his own. He took his dog all the way through therapy dog training, which we don't do, but he did. He worked with our trainer to continue that training. And then he went to the local VA and asked if it would be okay for him and his therapy dog to go to our particular VA and work with veterans there, and they approved that.
Exactly.
So that was something, again, that I'd love to see, that because we worked with a veteran and we helped him, and then he paid it forward to other veterans in our area on his own, and I'd love to see that. So I know that happens at certain chapters around the country where stories like that. Some of our volunteers, some of our trainers have done the same kind of thing, where they've gone to their local VAs and asked if it's okay for them to bring in a therapy dog to work with veterans. So it's kind of happening on a case by case basis. But yes, that is occurring in our different chapters around the country. Yes.
I think it's a stronger approach to healing, and that soul, connection, far greater than any kind of narcotics or any kind of prescriptions. Those are important. I get that, but reaching into their hearts and letting them cry and letting them feel something for the first time in a long time, maybe, letting them feel something, and being there and sharing that positive experience with them. Yeah, that's an important step in the right direction, I think. So we're gonna leave it at that. You guys don't want to hear me and Sean just start wailing here and getting all emotional. So we're gonna wrap that up. But once again, thanks, Sean Quigley. He is with Pets for Vets. Please check out this organization. Donate if you can. This is something you can donate to that is actually going to make a difference. It's not just going into a big slush fund. It's going to actually go directly to vets, and it goes towards the materials and the dog dishes and the dog bones and that kind of stuff, and so it's going to go to a good cause. So donate if you can. Get involved in any way that you can. If you are interested in starting your own chapter and you are in an area that don't have a chapter, then think about doing that as well. There's so many ways you can get involved. So I just encourage you to do that. So check out the link in the show notes. And any last word for the listener, Sean? And then I'm going to let you go and we're going to scoot out of here.
No, just to say thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it, Brad.
You're very welcome. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Men on a Mission podcast. And I want to thank you for listening. Please tell your friends, family, coworkers, anyone that is connected to the armed forces of the military here in the United States of America. We want to thank you for listening. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of the Man on a Mission podcast. But make sure you listen all the way to the end, because like our last episode, we have a special treat that you can sing along to as we close out the show. But for now, I will let you go. I've been your host, Brad Richard, and thanks again for joining us on the Men on a Mission podcast. Bye for now.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First we fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to